Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Namaste, and a very warm welcome to this session. It's truly an honor to be here to moderate this session, which is not just going to talk, we're not just going to talk about India's rapid transformation, but we'll also talk about how, India is expanding its voice as well in the global management education. So, I mean, I'll give you a little bit on India. It has been a cradle of learning for millennia. When I say that, it's because long before the universities that you have heard of, we had universities from the ancient world called Takshashila and Nalanda. You can Google about them, which would allow scholars coming from all over the globe, from Greece to China, to cultivate a culture of innovation, research, and dialogue. So, from the civilization that is very deep rooted in wisdom, philosophy, and holistic thinking, right now I would say that India is very young, dynamic, and ready to take on all the global challenges. So, to give a perspective, I would like to say that we have 1,100 universities with over 43 million students enrolled in higher education. And in fact, the median of 29 years is what we are looking at in India. So we have, I think we can very easily say that India is ready to be the largest exporter of talent. It's going to be by 2030. And so we have a saying, I'm talking about scale, I'm talking about past history. That matters, yes, but what is most important is something that I'm going to say, which is in Sanskrit. It's called Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, which means the world is one family. So it is in this spirit of innovation, collaboration, and impact that we are going to define Indian management education. So I'm not going to take a lot of time. I want to introduce a fantastic panel of four outstanding leaders who are at the forefront of this transformation. So let me introduce you first, Professor Himanshu Rai, Director, IIM Indore, and many of you already know him because I say that he, holds the beacon of Indian academia to the globe. And then we have Professor Mahadeo Jaiswal, who's the Director of IIM Sambalpur, Dr. Arvind Sahay, Director, MDI Gurgaon, and Dr. Ajit, Parulekar, Director, Goa Institute of Management. So if you're planning a visit to Goa, you know who to approach. So I'm going to start with a very basic question, which after giving you the perspective, I want to know from the delegates. Why should global institutions partner with Indian institutions? So anybody can go. I mean, I'm not going, yeah, you can start.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
So, a couple of reasons. First, purely, if I talk about the economy, the Indian economy is the fourth largest economy and on its way to become the third largest economy. Another 20 years, I'm sticking my neck out and saying we're going to become the second largest economy. That is one. Second, staying on the economy, we will have 100 million people enter the middle class in the next 5 years, and 450 million people enter the middle class in the next 10 years. We will have 20 million households becoming rich in the next 5 years. So that is one of the biggest reasons why the global institutions should partner. And purely if I talk about the academia itself, the academic scene, and particularly the management education. So in 2000, when I went to do my master's and my PhD, we used to have 40,000 people write what is called the common admission test, one of the toughest tests to get into the management institutions, particularly the Indian Institutes of Management. And today, that number is 320,000. So 320,000 students write a common admission test to get into, across all of us, I think we have about 10,000 seats, including the private, public, everyone. So there are still 310,000 students who aspire to get management education, but currently they do not have opportunities to do so. So I think multiple reasons why the global institutions should partner with Indian institutions.
Right. I mean, I would like to ask the same questions and get perspective from
Am I audible?
the others. Yes.
Let me just kind of build on what Himanshu, my colleague here, just said right now. One of the other reasons for us is not just the scale, but the quality of the students who take the exams. So out of the 320,000, 10,000 get into the programs. And now what is beginning to happen is that people are looking at ROI of going abroad, the return on investment and going abroad. And increasingly, because of what is happening geopolitically now, for a fair number of these people, spending 2 years, 2 full years for a master's program or 4 full years for an undergraduate program does not seem like a good idea from an ROI perspective. And so a lot of these guys are quite open to the idea of pursuing quality programs within the country, which is happening more and more. And if they can get a dual degree, for example, where part of the time is spent within India and part of the time is spent outside, then that becomes suddenly a lot more attractive. And many Indian institutions are now beginning to take this path. At MDI Gurgaon, actually, we have been one of the pioneers in this area. We've been running a dual degree program for the last 18 years in collaboration with a very highly ranked French school, ESCP. And we are actively in the mode of looking for more partnerships where we are able to tap into this demand that is there. And because of the geopolitical landscape, where there is an increasing analysis of does it make sense to spend 2 years or 4 years outside. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to be able to get into these partnerships, both from our perspective as well as from the perspective of many of the schools which are represented here.
Right. Dr. Ajit, yes.
I could go ahead. So both Himanshu and Arvind Sahay, both of them have spoken about the present, and the present, the opportunities as it is. The future is a lot more rosier in that sense. And I know in the morning we've been listening to challenges of enrollments. So what happens right now in India is you have, for all the top schools, let's say the top 50 schools, the enrollment rate is around 1%. Right? And the growth year on year in terms of number of applications for the top schools is in double digit. Across the country, it's around 5%, like a CAGR of 5% in the total number of students who want to do business education. Now, why I'm saying, the future is a lot brighter than this. Currently in India, the gross enrollment ratio, that is those who are eligible to do higher education, means undergraduate, it's currently 29%, which is very low. And the government targets to take it to 50% in about 10 years. As I see, it's impossible for us to serve that demand. All of our institutions have had a massive expansion in the number of programs, in the number of students that we offer these programs to, but we are still catching up. So just to talk about, let's say, on Indian Institutes of Management, 20 years back, there were 6 Indian Institutes of Management. Today, I think it's 23, is it?
23.
Yeah, so there are 23, and they're just serving the tip of the iceberg. So what you're expecting is currently these 320,000 who are taking the test for going for graduate management education, they represent this 29%, and that's going to grow by at least 60% in a decade's time. So as I see, it's impossible for us, so the issue that the country is grappling with is, one is, are we going to be able to do this only in the current relatively asset-heavy, full-time kind of education? And all of our institutions are trying to kind of do, let's say, our own efforts in nation building by experimenting with blended, with online, because there's no other way that you can increase the capacity of the top institutions in such a short period of time. And therefore, multiple other opportunities I can see is, of course, different kind of collaborative arrangements where you can have, dual degrees. So what it does, it just takes away the pressure away from our institutions for one whole year. You have them come and do 1 year, and they do 1 year somewhere else in the world. However, let me also say that Indian students are now a lot more picky and choosy. So they are also very clear about, India exports a large number of students in most institutions worldwide. And therefore, today there's a lot of know-how about kind of institutions, kind of programs, and things like that. So this is one. The second thing that's happening clearly in the country also is technology. So India has traditionally been very strong on math, and that's really feeding into technology. So today in India, the tech schools seem to be competing closely with the management schools, because everywhere you find most of the roles today, at least in India, you find there is techno and managerial, both of them come together. The last point I wanted to make on this is also that the cost of delivering education. So I do see And the opportunity here also is for outsourcing. So the offshoring that happened in IT and technology and now global capability centers, I see some time where there could be parts of blended online education which could be offshored at a significantly lower cost and feeding into at least, of course, it's not going to be mainstream. It's not going to be serving the top 5 or 10% of students. But there are a lot of other students who don't have the time and cannot afford that kind of money. And that's a place where I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to collaborate. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, Dr. Mahadeo.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Shikha, and also thanks, AMBA, for inviting us. Apart from I am director, dean, I'm also a professor. So let me speak from the professor perspective, that a framework to explain what is unique about Indian business education. So as we all know that 3D disruptions in the business happening. And 3D means first D is disruption due to digitalization. The second disruption is due to decarbonization. And third one is due to democratization of business. Now let me see from all these three angles, how is Indian B schools and Indian industries are actually working. So as we all know that in terms of digitalizations, India has built the world's largest unique identification called UID for citizens. It also has built world's largest digital payment systems, public infrastructure, public digital infrastructure. And very soon you'll be having our own OpenAI, which is Government of India has funded. In that context, in the field of digitalizations, and now every business, whether it's a manufacturing business, whether it's a retail business, whether it's banking, whether it's telecom, whether it's education, whether health, every business is becoming a software business. And every software is going to be managed through AI, not through manpower. And all this AI-enabled software business are shifting to GCC, he's talked about, Global Capability Centers of the whole world. And 2/3 of GCC are located in India already. And maybe more number of GCC are going to be shifted. The main reason is that we have high quality, technically competent people, IITs and IIMs, are producing techno managers to manage those capability centers. Earlier it used to be only a software development, today is complete business and innovation happening in GCC. So in terms of digital infrastructure, in terms of digitalizations of business, 2/3 of the world business are in India. So that is one. Second, decarbonization. That is where renewable energy, solar energies, and electric vehicle. India is still catching up. I would not say we are on the top. We are working on it. Europe and other countries are much ahead in terms of decarbonizing because our country is quite vast. And it will take another 15, 20 years to make it green. So great opportunity again in terms of how do you decarbonize Indian economy. The third, very important, there's a time when MNC used to be the place to work, large consulting companies, PwC, Accenture. Very soon you'll have the best place to work with startups, democratization of business. India is the world's third largest ecosystems of startups. US, China, and then third is India. We have about 160,000 startups already registered. We are working and soon to become unicorn. About 150 unicorns already working in India. In that kind of scenarios, the startups ecosystems that is where the talents are required. That is where the jobs are coming. And in future, every business that will shift to software, every software will be managed through startups and GCCs. In looking into all these three disruptions, Indian educational systems has to collaborate, and global institution has to collaborate in terms of producing techno managers. If you look at the job market today, everywhere it is sinking, including in US. India's GDP is growing and jobs market are growing. And people are not able to get admission in our institutions. Only 1% of the applicants get selected. Only 1%, which is the toughest exams in terms of getting to management education. Where are the 99% students going? They're going to Europe, they're going to UK, they're going to US. They don't get admission in India, they go out. This is the kind of scenarios. I think time has come when we need to collaborate with global institutions and work together and make the whole world as a one family. That is what India believes. Vasido Kudumbam, whole world is one. That is what the philosophy of Indians. And we are very open society. We are very democratic society. We are very inclusive society. India itself has a multilingual, multicultural environment. Every 50 kilometers, our language, our culture, our food changes. So we are very inclusive, very diversified kind of culture we have, and very intolerance. Like we are very inclusive and tolerant. And in that kind of scenario, I think the right place right now to collaborate with Indian-based schools. And Indian-based schools are now getting accredited by AACSB, by AMBA, as well as ICWIS. Most of the institutions today are getting triple coin.
Right.
In maybe next 2 to 3 years, almost hundreds of B schools will be triple coin.
Right.
So this is the kind of scenario I think India has.
Excellent points there. So, I mean, we are waiting for India to become the third largest economy. To just give you a perspective, it wasn't long ago, like in 1990, we were the 12th, and we slipped to actually 13th in 2000. So there has been some massive transformation for India in general. So I want to understand, it is the place to be. If you're not, then you're definitely missing out. So, and with the government's new education policy 2020, further doors are open for global collaborations. So, to solidify India as the management powerhouse, what do you think should be the top priorities for Indian and global partners to focus on together? Because we do know that it's not that we've just opened our doors for collaboration now. There has been global collaboration. I think some of your institutions have more than 100 partners around the globe. But what are those top priorities? Because it's important now that the focus shifts to, it's more funneled in the right direction. So what do you think are those top priorities that they should focus on working together?
So I think it's, if I may,
Yes.
I think it's very interesting that some of the dominant themes in this conference is exactly what we are also looking at. For example, AI has been a persistent theme, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure this is true for my co-panelists over here also, but AI is something that we are actively implementing in our classrooms. So one of the things, for example, we are doing is that we have these different courses like machine learning for business, generative AI for business. In some of the courses, students actually use I won't pretend to understand all of this. I'm merely a dean, not a technologist. They're using all sorts of different technologies to teach in the classroom. My colleague here will talk, I'm sure he will talk a little bit about what he has done in the classroom. So AI is a very clear focus area for a lot of our schools that we are bringing to the table because we want to prepare our students better. The second one, which I think is also there that we are focusing on is behavioral competencies. So in the last 1 year, whenever I have gone to different events, I speak at chief marketing officer events, CEO events, and whenever I talk to the managers, the leaders over there, they tell me that we are looking for people who have emotional resilience, who are collaborative, who are able to land on their feet in a different situation, who are multicultural. So very similar themes to what we have been hearing from Eric yesterday, from the Dean of ESSEC today, and so on. And the third, of course, that we have referred to, decarbonization was the term that was used by Mahadeo over here, but sustainability more generally defined. So to me, those are the three pillars, technology, and behavioral competencies and sustainability, which will underpin a lot of the things that each of the leading institutions, management and business institutions in India do going forward. Of course, they will find their own unique ways of doing it. But these kind of overlap very much with what is happening over here during this conference. I've been in conversations with quite a few people, and a lot of them have been talking about these same things. This is what they're implementing in their own institutions in different ways. So that's one part of it. Now, if I dig a little bit deeper, if I look at technology, for example, there are these issues of micro-credentials that people talk about. So if you are implementing AI, then what is it that you're implementing in AI? What are the kind of particular skill sets in AI which are applicable in what context? So that is something that we are still grappling with, and we need to figure out where we will go as we deploy more of AI behavioral competencies and sustainability into the curriculum across all the different programs that we have. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of commonality, similarity between what we are trying to do in India in different institutions, definitely my institution, as well as what I see happening at many institutions here that I see represented here at this conference.
Great. So I'll just build on what Arvind said, because I think a very important point that he made is that we are talking about technology and to what end. So for example, what we have realized is, when Shikha started, she said Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, Mahadeo further talked about it. It means one world, one family, one future. Now, what does the future look like? If I have to look at the future cannot be bright unless we have equity. And if I have to identify four wicked problems, which is something that we are trying to solve by using technology amongst the Indian institutions of higher education, we have the problem of inequality, where you have 1% of people holding 40% of the wealth, 10% of the people hold 60% of the wealth. Clearly, we cannot have a very, very bright future till this persists. And also the difference between a privileged male and an underprivileged female is 80 years, 80. Clearly, we need to address that, and for that, the business schools around the world have to come together. For example, what we are doing at IIM Indore is that while using technology, we are helping the farmers and artisans raise their income. And we have tried 2 pilot projects, and we have actually managed to raise the incomes by 40% within a period of 6 months, again, by using technology and AI and by creating e-market spaces. Urban infrastructure. The rate of urbanization all across the world, including India, is phenomenal. People used to talk about India being a country of farmers. Yes, it is. But you'll be surprised that today, 65% of India is urbanized. Even people in India don't know that figure. Because there's a particular definition of urbanization, of urban centers, etc. And the kind of pressure there is on urban infrastructure, that can be solved only through management education. For example, again, we have built something called a 5E model to address the traffic situation. And the traffic situation is bad all over the world. If you look at the big cities, etc., etc. So that is the second issue. The third challenge that I see is challenge around the environment. For example, at IIM Indore, we have a mandatory program called the Himalayan Outbound Program, where we take all our students to the Himalayas. Now, many people might think that, yeah, you must be doing some team building leadership. That is just one part of the story. Not many people know that Himalayas are also called the third pole. Why? Because they are the second highest source of fresh water in the world. The biggest source is obviously the South Pole, the Antarctica. The second highest is Himalaya. The Himalayan glaciers actually give water to 2/3 of the Indian subcontinent. They hold about 10 to 15% of the fresh water in the world. 50 to 60% is in Antarctica, and 5 to 10% is in the Arctic, in the North Pole. And therefore, the reason why we take them there, and which is why the University of Liverpool also said, hey, we are going to send 20 students to come on this particular program with your students. The reason is, when you see a plastic bottle, let's say in this room, you might feel a little weird saying, okay, why did they have a plastic bottle? But when you see a plastic bottle in a Himalayan glacier, you feel physically repulsed because you know that that's where the water is coming from. And that is how we are trying to educate not just our people, but people around the world. And the fourth big wicked problem that I see are rural challenges across the world, because we still have significant population percentages living in rural areas. Just to give you an idea about India, 900 million people live in rural areas. Their challenges are completely different. So once again, we take all our students to the rural areas and we make them live in a village for 7 days. And at the least, they will get more empathetic. At most, probably, they'll try and solve those problems, which we try and do. And once again, a lot of our global partners, institutions, they have said, hey, we want to become a part of this. We want our students to know. Now, even if you're looking at it from a blinkered perspective of the bottom of the pyramid as a market, what I can assure you is that with the kind of skilling that we are currently doing in India, India is not only going to be the world's biggest market, it's going to be the world's biggest resource. And this resource today in India is not in the cities of India, but is also in the villages of India. So I think to solve these 4 wicked problems, which are not just India's, because many a times we believe that India's problems are not the problems of the world, but the world's problems are the problems of India. But I think these are the problems which we all have to address to create a more equitable world.
Yes.
Let me just take 2 points, right? So first is, most of the institutions, most of the management institutes in India, they're not called business schools, right? They're called institutes. So they're the Indian Institute of Management, the Management Development Institute, the Goa Institute of Management. And I think that's, I don't know how I don't know how it started out, but that tells you how we see ourselves. We don't see ourselves as serving business alone. Business clearly is one of our most important stakeholders, but so are others. And the reason that's the case, that we are institutes of management, is I think because India, like any other country, so the key issues remain the same, like we've talked here, and I think Arvind has talked about it in a little bit of detail. But I think there's also a unique way of approaching these, and there are some unique challenges we have. So at the one end, you find in India, you'll find it's kind of really high-tech. We're looking at our own AI. You'll have, India has a very ambitious and successful space program. India does a lot of work in STEM. But at the same time, India has a challenge with poverty. India has, India has multiple different kinds of problems at the same time. And the big challenge we face is every problem is at a massive scale. And that's why what really, I would think also in terms of partnerships, unless you have technology and unless you have scalable technology, I think, the solutions of India are not going to be, and you're not going to be so to say, an attractive partner for Indian institutions. Because everything that happens in the country will have to happen at scale. And I'll pick some of the points that some of them have made. So India now has biometric digital identity for 1.38 billion people. And that's been a major enabler. And this biometric identity is linked to over 1 billion mobile phone connections. So therefore, what happens is it gives you payment security. So for all of us, what happens, you have a biometric, you have a unique identity, and you have a payment system that gets, on an OTP comes in on your phone, and that's brought in like high amount of security in transactions, but at scale, at like billions of transactions a day, literally. And the same with education. The same is our challenge with healthcare. So India had one of the worst healthcare systems in the world. So till a decade back, quite embarrassing and shameful for us that 70% of expenses that were there for healthcare expenses were out of pocket. And the number one reason to put Indians into poverty were catastrophic health expenses. So over the last decade, there's been a universal health coverage scheme in place, which, like every other country in the world, it's difficult to afford. And therefore, what you will find, that's another example, you'll find a lot of innovative, frugal innovation, where you'll get high quality cataract surgery, CABG or your heart transplant and stuff like that at a fraction of a cost anywhere else in the world with similar kind of outcomes coming out. And that's really where, most of the institutions in India are looking at partnerships to places where you can. So for us as education institutions, we'd like to reach much larger numbers so that the gross enrollment ratios and the population served goes up. But clearly, it'll have to be scalable through, tech-enabled education. Yeah, so I think that's...
Yeah, so let me talk about very specific initiative which is relevant to the management education for professors, which we are doing currently. And in the morning, Mr. Andrew talked about our case, like I am Sambalpur. He said that AI-enabled case discussions actually being experimented at our place. Not only experimented, we are rolling it out. So what we have done is we have collaborated with an American company, which is founded by an Indian guy. It's an AI-enabled learning platform where we load our case or any reading materials, and then the case discussion, class discussion happen by the students of maybe 100 and 1,000, doesn't matter, for 90 minutes without faculty. And it ensures that every students come well prepared in the class, and using Bloom's taxonomy, 6 layers evaluation, their marks, their level of understanding is evaluated. And as soon as the case discussion is over, all the marks of each groups as well as individual students are recorded in the platform and emailed to all the students as well as to faculty members, so that each students know that what is his level. In next class, professor comes, and then instead of teaching, the teaching job of a faculty is gone. Don't try to become teacher. Teaching will be taken care by AI. However, you become a professor now. You create research and innovation in the class, which we used to do earlier in the laboratories and libraries and field. I think with 300 students are sitting, the top talent of the country, of the world, that is the place to do research. So next sessions, when everybody has come to the equal level by reading the case or any article, we collaborate with the student and also bring industry for the problem statements called, kind of a industry exposures and industry project. And unsolved problem of industry are getting solved inside the classroom. I think that is the innovation we are experimenting, and that is only one part of that. That is only from the learning perspective. But at the same time, we are also creating a case center where each class, based on the industry project, will create a case. And so tomorrow, thousands of cases will be available in our platform, and I think that is the time when Harvard will have to rethink of selling their cases to B schools. I think people will shift to our central system and our platform, and we'll be giving it 1/10 of the price of what Harvard is giving. So these are the kind of development innovations we are doing, and that is where I think is opportunity for all of you to collaborate with Indian schools and create disruption in the whole world of business education.
Absolutely lovely. In fact, if we have time, we could play that video, but we'll see if we do. So I think we are about time, and Emily has already shown me the, the clock. So we can take maybe one question. Yes, please.
Mike.
You'll have to run with that.
It's coming.
Running guy.
Sikandar on his way. Thank you, Sikandar.
It's an honor to make the only question. My name is José Paulo Esperança. I'm from the City University of Macau. My question is very simple. China is India is an example of frugality in many aspects. I am sure that the largest pool of vegetarians in the world is in India. Now you speak of a very fast progress and development. Are you not afraid that some challenges come to sustainability? You mentioned the Himalaya and the reserves of fresh water that are due to climate change and many of these problems. So if Indians, if the population of India starts using cars, especially traditional cars, and eating more meat, wouldn't that be a challenge for the whole planet? And how do you want to tackle that? Thank you.
Let me take that one.
You don't have time, so
We just finished a couple of projects for, one very coincidentally was for Skoda Volkswagen, and we are doing one for Maruti Suzuki just now. And between now and 2030, the Indian car market will expand from the current 4 million to around maybe 7.5 million per annum. But a lot of that expansion will happen in electric vehicles, number one. Number two, in India, cars are not the largest automotive market. It's actually two-wheelers, motorcycles and scooters, which is close to 18 million. And already in that market, around 7-8% is now electric, and within the next 5 years, more than 40-50% will become electric. So the transition is well underway. But I also want to address a slightly other point that you mentioned, where you said Indians are vegetarians. Actually, that's not true. 65 to 70% of Indians are non-vegetarians. In the southern states of India, 98% of the people are non-vegetarians. But there is a certain part of India, Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, which tends to be a majority vegetarian. And for whatever reason, which I haven't fathomed, maybe it's more people from there who are coming abroad compared to the rest of India. The general perception is that Indians are vegetarians, but not true. I think at least 2 out of the 4 of us here are non-vegetarian.
He's non-veg. I'm vegetarian.
So here's this. So over here also, 3 out of the 4 panelists are non-vegetarian. I don't know about Shikha.
I'm a preferred vegetarian.
Okay.
So I will eat
so
meat.
Even here, 60% on the stage are non-vegetarians. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
I acknowledge what you're saying is absolutely right, and I'll give you a figure. And I'll also tell you as to why is it inevitable and also unfair to expect otherwise. The current consumption of electricity, which is an indicator of what we do per day in India, is 800 watts. The US consumes 9,000 watts a day. The world average would be 3 times. Of course, we are going to consume more electricity, which means we are going to actually use more energy. But like Arvind pointed out, are we doing something about it? Look, we are an aspirational country. So if we have had people who were driving two-wheelers, they aspire to drive four-wheelers. Once you have four-wheelers, then you go back to a cycle because you realize that when you're driving too much in four-wheelers, you tend to kind of put on weight and you go back to the cycle. So you start from the cycle, you go back to the cycle. But the whole point is our country is an aspirational country. We are going to consume more. We are going to actually use more electricity. But are we doing something about it? The answer is yes. Because what we are doing is we are phasing down the burning of coal. We are greenifying not just campuses, but the entire country. We are harvesting water. So anything, when it comes to the sources of energy, we are going for renewable sources. So at the same time, we acknowledge that there is going to be these challenges around sustainability. But one of the things that we have to understand is that we have to make sure that these are all externalities. So for example, when it comes to people actually destroying environment in one place and planting trees in another, we don't believe in something like that. What we are trying to say is that we are going to consume, however, we are going to engage in what we call responsible consumption. And that means that we are going to use more and more renewable, and we are going to also reduce the consumption. So for example, the world was talking about the 3 Rs. They were talking about reduce, recycle, and reuse. But what we are talking about currently under a thing called Mission Life, which is Lifestyle for Environment, is a 4th R, which is refuse. So what we are telling India and our own people is that first refuse. Do I need another suit? Maybe not. If you can't refuse, then reduce, and whatever it is that you use, make sure that you reuse and recycle. So that's how we are addressing it.
Excellent. I think we've already crossed the timeline, and the team is really... Thank you so much for this amazing, insightful discussion. So that ends the panel. Thank you. Thank you so much.